Okay. So, wait, before we start, can I ask you something?
We haven't even started the show yet.
Okay, I know, but, like, I've been sitting here thinking, and you told me this podcast is gonna be about scripture.
Yes.
I've read the scriptures like I've read them,
Okay.
and I thought I understood it, like, I really did, and now you're telling me that I've been, like, missing stuff.
Yes.
How much stuff?
A lot of stuff.
Great, cool, love that for me.
That's actually exactly why we're doing this show,
Because
Elijah.
because I'm bad at reading, or
Because most people read scriptures the same way you do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a whole different layer. Actually, there are many layers that most of us were never taught to look for.
okay, I'm gonna choose to feel excited about that and not personally attacked.
That's the spirit. Cue entry music. Welcome to Sacred Syntax.
I'm Elijah,
And I'm Joshua.
and this show is about scripture, but not just reading scripture,
It's about learning to see it.
which apparently is a very different.
Very different things because most of us approach scripture like it's a modern book. You crack it open, you read the story, prophets, wars, journeys, miracles, and you think, okay, got it. Good story, inspiring.
I mean, yeah, that's basically what I did. It's what
And
everybody does.
there's real value in that, but the people who wrote these texts were doing so much more than telling stories. They were encoding patterns in them, symbols, language cues, temple imagery, ancient cultural references, even literary structures and numerology,
Like numerology, like numbers.
like numbers. Yes, we'll get to that.
I didn't even pass algebra, man. Like I can't.
You'll be fine. I'm not much better than you are. This is more like symbolic math.
That sounds worse, actually.
Well, let's talk about the core problem here, okay? Why is it that people who have read the scriptures their whole lives, smart, thoughtful people, still miss so much of what's in there?
I feel like this question is targeted at me directly.
It's directed at everyone, Elijah. Here's the thing. Ancient texts did not work like modern books. They assumed the reader already knew things like ancient culture, Hebrew writing styles, temple symbolism, sacred literature, literary structures.
So they wrote assuming the reader already knew a whole bunch of stuff that we don't know.
Exactly. So when a modern reader opens, say, the Book of Mormon or the Bible, they're reading the same words that an ancient Israelite would have read, but they're missing the signals, the clues that ancient authors were sending them.
So it's like I wrote a letter full of inside jokes and then I like handed it to a stranger.
That's actually a fantastic analogy.
Oh, thank you. I have my moments.
The stranger can read every word, but they're not getting the joke, right?
Right, and the joke is actually the whole point.
In some cases, yes, and that's what we're doing here. We're trying to become the kind of readers who get the joke, who see what the ancient writers were actually doing.
Okay, I'm in. So where do we start with this?
Well, we're better than the beginning. Let's open up First Nephi chapter 1.
Book of Mormon, first chapter, first page. Got it.
First sentence, actually.
Oh,
Ready?
born ready.
Nephi opens his record like this: I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents, having been taught somewhat in all the learning of my father.
Okay, yep, I've read that 100 times.
What does it mean to you?
Means Nephi had good parents, like they were decent people.
Right, that's the surface reading. Good reading. But here's when it gets interesting. What if I told you that the name Nephi is itself part of the sentence?
What do you mean?
Well, scholars, including researchers published in BYU's academic archive, have argued that the name Nephi most likely comes from the ancient Egyptian word NFR, Nefer. And do you want to know what Nefer means?
Feel like I do.
It means good, or goodly, or fair, or fine.
Wait.
Wait for it.
So the sentence is like I good having been born of goodly parents.
Yeah,
That's a pun.
that is a pun, a Hebraic pun, or what scholars call a wordplay. The ancient scribes loved doing this. You embed the meaning of the name directly into the text. By the way, by Lehi's time, around 600 BC, the Egyptian word was probably pronounced something like Nephi.
Nephi.
There you go.
Okay, that's genuinely cool. That's actually cool. Like I do feel kind of cheated that nobody told me that.
Well, it doesn't stop there. Nephi actually brackets his entire writing with references to goodness. He starts with goodly parents and ends his writing anchored in the goodness of God. This is a literary structure called an inclusio, from the Latin word for enclosed,
And in inclusio.
inclusio. Yeah, it's like bookends. You put a theme or a word at the beginning and the end of a section to signal that this is a unified piece. This all belongs together.
So Nephi is literally saying with his name, "Hi, I'm good," and everything I'm about to write is about goodness.
before he's even written a full sentence even.
I've never felt so illiterate in my life. Okay, okay, but wait. So we've only talked about his name. The rest of that sentence is born of goodly parents. You said that's not just a nice thing to say about his mom and dad.
Right. In the ancient world, establishing your parentage at the beginning of a text was not small talk. It was a legal claim.
Like a credentials check.
Exactly. In ancient Israelite culture and most ancient Near Eastern cultures, how you opened a formal record was enormously important. When Nephi says he was born of goodly covenantal parents, he's telling the ancient reader, I come from a legitimate line. I have priestly heritage, and my authority to write is real.
So he's basically showing his ID.
He's showing his ID, yes. And actually, the Hebrew concept here is called something called like Yichus, Yichus, which refers to one's lineage and the honor associated with it. Your Yichus was your spiritual resume.
My yichus.
Your Yichus.
I don't think my yichus was great, honestly.
We can work on it, don't worry. But here's the point. Scholars like Richley Crapo have confirmed that Lehi likely held the higher priesthood. He was probably descended from the northern tribe of Manasseh, even. And when you combine that with what Nephi says in verse 2,
That is, his father taught him to write in the language of the Jews and in Egyptian.
yes, you caught that.
I've been doing my reading.
Think about what that tells us. Around 600 BC, most people were illiterate, full stop. Even among the literate, being able to write in two languages, Hebrew or Aramaic, plus Egyptian, was extremely rare. Noel Reynolds, writing for the Interpreter Foundation in 2022, says this is, quote, incontestable evidence that Nephi had received scribal training at the highest level in Jerusalem.
So we're not talking about a guy who just happened to know how to read.
We're talking about somebody who's been trained in an elite intellectual and spiritual tradition of his time. He's not just a wanderer with a record. He's a trained scribe from a priestly family.
So he's telling us all of that in the first verse.
In part of the first verse.
Oh, this book is dense. Okay, so there's one more part of that first verse I want to get to. So Nephi says he has a great knowledge of the goodness of God, and he says he knows the mysteries of God. I always read mysteries as like things that are hard to understand.
That's how most people read it, but let's look at the actual words mysteries. In Greek, and this is important because Greek was the cultural lingua franca of much of the ancient world, the word is mysteria. Mystera.
Mysteria, like that. That sounds like a spy movie.
It kind of does. But in the ancient world, mysteria referred to something very specific. They were things revealed only to the initiated, things you could only learn if you had gone through a specific ritual process. Use your spiritual eyes.
So it's like a secret society kind of thing.
Uh, kind of, yeah. There were mystery religions all throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. The Eleusinian mysteries were in Greece, the Mithraic mysteries, but in an ancient Israelite context, the mysteries of God were things learned in the temple. You could go through temple rituals, and in doing so, you would receive knowledge not available to outsiders, spiritual eyes, spiritual ears.
So when Nephi says he knows the mysteries of God,
He may be quietly signaling, I've been through the temple. I've been initiated. What I'm about to share comes from that sacred space.
oh, and then he says that's why he's writing to share the goodness of God and the mysteries he's learned.
Which raises a fascinating question.
Yeah, if Nephi says there are mysteries in the text, then we're supposed to look for them?
I think that's exactly what he's inviting us to do.
Okay, not gonna lie, I got chills from that.
That tends to happen.
So this is from the first sentence.
First verse.
Okay, give me a minute.
All right. So now that we've cracked the door open, let's talk about the tools we'll be using throughout this podcast.
Can I just say the fact that you called them tools makes me feel like way more prepared, like I'm going on an archaeological dig.
That's actually not a bad way to think about it. Tool number 1, temple imagery.
The temple.
One of the biggest, most pervasive themes we will encounter is temple symbolism. The ancient writers were often writing about the temple even when they didn't say the word temple. Sacred mountains, rivers of living water, sacred trees, pillars of fire, ascending journeys. These are all temple symbols.
So the temple is like hiding in plain sight.
All the time. And we'll see this immediately even in 1 Nephi 1. In verse 6 it says that a pillar of fire came and dwelt upon a rock as Lehi was praying.
Okay, just a question. Are those all temple symbols?
Every single one.
Oh.
The phrase "there came" is what scholars call theophany grammar, the standard way ancient writers described God making an appearance. Pillar of fire appears throughout Scripture as the medium of God's presence. Think Exodus 13. See, also think Joseph Smith. And here's the one that really gets me: dwelt.
The word dwelt.
In Hebrew, dwelt comes from the same root as the word mishkan, Mishkan, which means the tabernacle, the dwelling place of God.
Come on.
And the fire dwells on a rock, which is altar and foundation stone imagery. Again, direct temple references.
So Lehi's out there praying, and the scene is basically set up to look like a temple.
The text is quietly telling us that this is a holy place. This is happening in sacred space.
But without ever using the word temple.
That's the Hebrew way. They often referred to the temple implicitly because it was what's called the axis mundi, in Latin, the axis of the world, or the center of all reality. You didn't always need to name it, you just used its imagery. They assumed you'd read it that way.
Okay, Axis Mundi. I'm going to write that down. Okay, so you mentioned something else about Lehi going forth, that there was something special about that phrase.
Yes. So in verse 5, Nephi tells us that Lehi went forth. In Hebrew, that's the word yasa, Y-A-S-A. And in temple language, yasa, or going forth, meant leaving ordinary space and becoming or beginning a ritual act.
So it's not just he left the house.
No, it's a signal. And what does Lehi do when he goes forth? He prays on behalf of his people.
And that's significant because
in ancient Israelite tradition, praying on behalf of the people was the role of a priest, or specifically a high priest. It wasn't something any ordinary person did. That was temple authority. That was a consecrated role.
So Lehi just casually walks out and does a high priest thing.
In a setting that looks like a temple, with a pillar of fire on a rock while he quakes and trembles.
Which is also the temple thing you said.
Quaking, trembling, becoming overcome in the presence of God. That's a pattern you see in Isaiah 6, Ezekiel 1, Daniel 10, even Joseph Smith's first vision. It's the standard response to a divine encounter.
Oh, so scripture writers seem to have been very into fainting.
They were, you're right. Being overwhelmed by the divine was actually considered evidence that the encounter was real. Just think about the day of Pentecost, where they spoke in tongues, or the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, where they did the same thing. All right, let's go into tool number 2 now. And this one might be my personal favorite.
All right, let's hear it.
Chiasmus. Chiasmus.
Chiasmus.
Chiasmus, yes. Named after the Greek letter chi, which is shaped like an X.
An X. Oh, okay.
So here's how it works. Chiasmus is a literary structure where ideas are arranged in a mirror pattern. So think of it like this. You start with ideas going down the page, A, B, C. Then you reverse them, C, B, A. So the full structure is A, B, C, C, B, A.
Like folding a piece of paper in half and then...
Exactly. Just like that. Folding a piece of paper in half. And the point of that structure is to draw the reader's attention to the center, the turning point. The C in the middle is the most important idea.
So the writers were hiding the main point in the middle.
Or emphasizing it at least. In Hebrew literary tradition, chiasmus was one of the most important tools a skilled writer had. And once you start looking for it in scripture, it's everywhere. Entire chapters are built around it. Entire books.
Give me like one example.
Sure. Okay, here's a simple one. A, get your papers out. A, Lehi leaves Jerusalem. Now, B, family travels through the wilderness. C, they arrive at the promised land. That's the main point. B, they settle and build. And then A, they establish a new Jerusalem. Everything mirrors around that center. And every time you read the A's, they're meant to call each other to mind. Lehi leaves Jerusalem, they establish a new Jerusalem. Family travels through the wilderness, they settle and build.
Okay, so it's not just a pattern, it's actively teaching you something about how the ideas relate to each other.
You just described chiasmus better than most seminary students.
Hey, I'm good at this sometimes.
Tool 3, Hebraisms.
Hebraisms. Okay, easy.
Right. These are phrases or constructions that make perfect sense in Hebrew, but feel slightly off in English. And once you realize them, you realize, oh, this isn't bad writing, this is just Hebrew.
An example would be...
Well, here's the most obvious one, and I promise you've noticed this. And it came to pass.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I've read that phrase maybe 11,000 million times.
In English, it sounds repetitive. almost like a glitch.
Honestly, I would zone out when I hit that. I'd like be like, okay, I'm just gonna move on.
But in Hebrew storytelling, that phrase is a narrative marker. The Hebrew behind it is something like vayehi, Vayehi, meaning and it was or and it happened. It's a signal to the reader the scene is shifting. The time has passed. We are now entering a new unit of the story. Move on.
Oh, so it's like a chapter break, but in the sentence.
Essentially, yeah. And in the Hebrew oral tradition, where stories were often told aloud, these markers helped the listener follow the structure. When you heard Vayehi, you lean in. Something new is beginning.
Oh, so all those "and it came to pass" markers that I skimmed over.
Were the ancient equivalent of pressing pause and saying, pay attention, we're starting something new.
Dang, me and Mark Twain know that guy in apology.
Exactly. Now, tool 4. Ready? Language itself. Nephi actually tells us something strange in verse 2. He says he was taught in the language of the Egyptians alongside the learning of the Jews.
Okay, I glossed over that too, but that's weird, right? Because like, why Egyptian? They're Jewish.
It is very interesting. Egypt and Israel had a complicated but deeply intertwined relationship for centuries. I mean, think about Jesus Christ going into Egypt. Think about Moses in Egypt. Many scholars believe that certain Israelite priestly families, especially those connected to the temple, maintained Egyptian scribal traditions because they were sophisticated literary tools.
So Egyptian was like the fancy writing system.
In some contexts, yes. Think of it like Latin in medieval Europe or cursive. Educated people wrote in Latin even if they spoke something else, because that's where the literary tradition was,
And Nephi's family used both of these languages.
which is yet another signal of their high priestly scribal status. And the point is, language matters. Sometimes a single word in the original language unlocks something you would have never seen in the English translation,
Like Nefer,
like Nephi,
which means good.
which means good.
Which means Nehi literally started his book with a pun about his name.
He did.
I love this guy. He's hilarious.
Tool 5, culture. And this one is huge because we are reading texts written in a world so different from ours that we regularly miss the point of entire passages.
One example would be
Sure. First Nephi 3:26. Let's open up to it. Nephi and his brothers are trying to figure out who's going to retrieve the brass plates from Laban. And the text says they cast lots.
yeah, I always picture them like drawing straws or something.
Yeah, most people do. It sounds like a random decision making tool, but in ancient Israelite culture, casting lots, or in Hebrew, goral, Goral, was not random at all. It was a sacred act. On the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year, the high priests cast lots to determine which goat would be sacrificed and which would be the scapegoat. Lots were determined in the temple, and they determined temple assignments and priestly duties.
So it was how you asked God to choose something.
Exactly. Casting lots was how you deferred the decision to God. You weren't leaving it to chance. You were actively inviting divine guidance. It was faith. And when Nephi's family does this,
They're doing a temple thing again.
they're doing a temple thing again. And they're also demonstrating something about their character. They're people who defer to God's will rather than their own judgment.
Okay, so if you don't know the culture, you just think they played a quick game of rock, paper, scissors.
Actually, yeah, basically, yes.
Okay, but they're actually performing a sacred priestly ritual.
In the middle of a wilderness crisis. Yes. All right, tools 6 and 7. History and names. They're deeply connected. History is when we understand the political tensions of 600 BC, Jerusalem, the Babylonian threat, the crisis among the priests, the dispute over who held legitimate authority, and suddenly Lehi's decision to leave Jerusalem. It makes more sense when you know all of that.
Because it wasn't just a random road trip.
No, it was a response to a specific historical moment, actually, and knowing that history changes how you read every chapter that follows.
Okay, names, go.
Names in ancient scripture were almost never accidental. A name described a person's destiny, their role or their covenant identity, even. We already saw this with Nephi. Remember, NFR, Nefer, or good, but consider. The name Lehi in Hebrew likely means jaw or jawbone, and there's a place called Lehi in Judges 15, where Samson slew 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey.
They would have had a reaction to hearing that name.
The way we might react to the name Christian or faith, we immediately understand something about the identity being signaled. Ancient names worked the same way, just more deeply embedded in literary and theological tradition.
This is making me want to look up my own name.
Elijah in Hebrew, Eliyahu, which is my God is Yahweh. So it's my God is Jehovah.
That's actually pretty good use.
Not bad at all.
Okay, so the last tool, you saved the weird one for last, didn't you?
Numerology.
Numbers. This is the one I'm least confident about.
Fair. Let me start you with this simple question. How many days does it take in ancient scripture for something sacred to happen?
I want to say 3
3.
because Jesus rose on the 3rd day.
That's one example. But 3-day journeys show up constantly in sacred narrative. Abraham traveled 3 days to the place where he would sacrifice Isaac. Jonah was in the whale 3 days. Moses asked Pharaoh for 3 days to go sacrifice in the wilderness. And,
Oh, and Lehi traveled 3 days into the wilderness before setting up his camp.
yep, in 1st Nephi 2.
Okay, 3 days.
And in ancient Israelite tradition, a 3-day journey often marked the moment of transition from ordinary space into sacred space. 3 days didn't just mean 3 days, it meant we're leaving the world behind. Something holy is about to happen.
So when you read 3 days in scripture,
You should immediately pay attention. Yes, the author is signaling a threshold moment.
okay, what about 7?
7. In Hebrew, Sheva, Sheva, is the number of completeness and covenant. The word Sheva actually shares a root with the word for oath or promise, Shavua. 7 days of creation, 7-year sabbatical cycles, covenants sealed with 7-fold repetition. Remember, forgive 70 times 7.
Okay, what about the number 40?
40 means a full testing period. See, Moses fasted for 40 days. Israel wandered 40 years. Christ was in the wilderness 40 days. Rain fell 40 days in Noah's flood. 40 is always, this is a complete duration of a trial or preparation for something new that's about to begin.
Okay, and 12?
Ah, yes. So 12 is the people of God or the fullness of the priesthood. 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, 12 sons of Jacob. When you see 12, you're being signaled to think about the covenant community, the complete gathering of God's people in his power.
So numbers in scripture are like a shorthand code.
A theological shorthand, yes. When you see them, you're supposed to feel something, to understand that you're in a particular kind of story, a particular kind of moment.
I feel like I just unlocked a cheat code.
You kind of did.
Okay, I want to do what you did with me before we recorded, where you showed me how all these tools work together on a single passage. So can we do that in real time?
Let's do it. Okay, 1st Nephi chapter 2, open up. Lehi's family is leaving Jerusalem,
Got it.
and we're told they traveled how many days in the wilderness?
3, sacred transition. Got it.
Yep, before Lehi pitched his tent in a valley.
Okay, what's special about a tent?
In Hebrew, the word for dwelling, mishkan, is the same root for the word tabernacle, the dwelling place of God. Now, combine that with the fact that Lehi pitched his tent in a valley next to a river running continually.
A water is a temple symbol.
Yes, rivers of living water are one of the most consistent temple symbols in all of ancient scripture, from Ezekiel's vision of the river flowing from the temple to the river of life in Revelation. Water flows from sacred space.
So Lehi sets up camp next to a river in a valley after 3 days in a tent that sounds like a tabernacle.
And then in verse 20, he calls the river after his son Laman and exhorts Laman to be like unto this river, continually running into the fountain of all righteousness.
The fountain of all righteousness. Okay.
Yes, a fountain or a spring was one of the most common ancient images for the temple, water flowing from a sacred source. Also, take that in conjunction with what Laban's name means, and you'll learn about it later, and you have something there.
So the campsite is a wilderness temple.
The campsite, in narrative terms, is functioning as a tabernacle pattern, a covenant community led by a priestly patriarch, gathered in sacred space near living water, after a 3-day transition into holiness.
So Nephi's not describing his campsite, he's describing the founding of a new covenant people.
Now you're reading scripture.
I need a snack. This is way too much.
Take a breath. All right, we'll continue.
Okay, so no, genuinely, I've read this my whole life, like my entire life. And I thought Lehi just like set up a tent because, he's camping.
Well, he did set up a tent, but the way the story is told is doing so much more than describing logistics.
It's describing the birth of a new Israel.
In the wilderness, just like Moses, just like the Exodus.
And if you don't know any of this, you just think, oh, cool, they went camping.
Correct.
I cannot believe we've been camping this whole time.
That's kind of how I feel about Deathly Hallows Part 1. All right, let me ask you a question.
Okay, sure.
After everything we've just talked about, the wordplay, the temple imagery, the chiasmus, the sacred numbers, the cultural clues, does scripture feel smaller to you or bigger?
Oh, bigger, like genuinely. Like, I feel like someone handed me a pair of glasses I didn't know I needed.
That's the point. The ancient prophets who wrote these texts expected their readers to think, to notice, to wrestle with the text and ask questions. The scriptures weren't meant to be read once and checked off a list.
They were meant to be searched.
Search the scriptures. That's in John 5:39. The word in Greek is eraunate, Eraunate. It means to investigate, to dig, to probe. It's not passive reading. It's active archaeology. It's feasting on the word.
So we're back to this dig metaphor.
We never left it, actually. And here's what I love about this. Nephi basically tells us in the very first verse, actually, he says he's writing to share the goodness of God and the mysteries he has learned. If Nephi is promising mysteries, maybe we should take him up on that.
We've just been ignoring the invitation.
For a long time. Now, let me leave us with something. Nephi says he has a great knowledge of the goodness and the mysteries of God, and he says that's why he made this record.
To share it.
He's been to the temple. He's been initiated. He's learned things that most people never have access to. And instead of keeping it hidden, he writes it down. He encodes it in layers, yes. But he's inviting us to find it.
So he's hiding treasure and he's leaving a map.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And we've been walking right over this treasure for years, reading the surface, thinking we understood.
So what if Nephi's been frustrated with us this whole time?
I mean, he wrote it for us to search, so maybe the question isn't whether Nephi is frustrated. The question is, what have we been missing? And what might we discover if we finally learn to read it the way the ancient writers intended it to be read?
Yeah, I actually do want to know now, like, genuinely.
That's the entire point of this show.
Oh, okay. So where are we going to go next episode with that?
Well, next episode, we're going to go back to the beginning, the very opening of 1st Nephi, and we're going to go line by line through Lehi's vision, because what he sees in that vision is one of the most sophisticated pieces of ancient temple imagery in all of Restoration scripture.
And it's going to break my brain again.
Almost certainly.
Fantastic. Okay, one last thing. So in the beginning of the episode, I said I thought I understood scripture, and you included me in most people.
Yes.
So do I understand scripture better now? Like actually, have I leveled up?
Elijah, you just identified a wilderness tabernacle pattern in 1st Nephi 2. You recognized 3 as a sacred traditional number. You understood why casting lots was a priestly act. Yeah, I think you leveled up.
Oh, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me today.
It's 9 a.m.
The day is young. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is Sacred Syntax.
I'm Joshua.
I'm Elijah, and apparently I've been reading scripture wrong my entire life, so we're going to fix that.
We're fixing it together. And if you want to go deeper on anything from today's episode, the etymology of Nephi's name, the Nephi connection, or any of the scholars we've referenced, we'll have links to it in the show notes.
And if you're like me and some of this flew right over your head, don't worry, that's literally why I'm here. We're going to go slowly and build this up as we go.
Come back next week. We're going verse by verse through Lehi's vision, 1st Nephi 1. And I promise, by the time we're done, you will never read these chapters again the same way.
Oh, it's going to be great. Probably also slightly unnerving.
That's kind of how learning works.
Unfortunately true. See you next time.
Shalom. Shalom.